right. Welcome to the Prospect Podcast. We are back with our recurring guest, Georgia Miller, who talks a good amount about how to handle things within the mental space of playing sports, how to be able to address the things that athletes come across every single day with respect to how they feel, how they handle things, how they deal with adversity. So she's an expert in that field, and we've been having her on a recurring basis. It's great to have you back, Georgia.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. As always, I have Coach D. He's on top today. He's on top today. So uh, he's the Lord of the Manor, I guess, so to speak, today since he's on top. So we're great to have you on today and talk some more different things from that standpoint. Give people just a brief background, just for if someone's tuning in for the first time. A little bit about what everything that you do.
Yeah, so I mostly work one-on-one with athletes, helping them develop a stronger mental game. So we're working on things like overcoming adversity, building resilience, focus, transferring practice to games. Confidence is a big piece, social approval. I'm working with coaches on implementing sports psych techniques into their team culture. And then I also work with quite a few sport parents too on helping their athletes to be better on and off the field, not put so much pressure on them. So that's day to day for me, one on one, and then I'll also do some team stuff too, like team seminars and workshops.
That's fantastic stuff. As always, it's really interesting. Talk a little bit about the workshops that you do. I'm curious. Like, what do those entail?
Yeah. So, for example, a high school just hired me to come in and work with their football team for spring season. So, I'll be going to their high school once a week and meeting with all the guys, and we'll have hour-long workshops on different topics like letting go of mistakes, communication, focus, and confidence, and managing pressure were the first five that we came up with. And I'll typically have a little educational piece like, why are we learning this? That's usually 5 minutes because athletes, they
Yeah.
need to know the why, but we don't need a 20-minute long conversation on why this is so important. And then I'll typically try to run them through some sort of experiential exercise. So, for example, if we're doing like letting go of mistakes or pressure, I'm going to simulate an exercise for them that puts them in a pressure situation. And then we debrief and we connect it back to football and how they can really apply it in their practice and in games. But it's fun working with groups and teams. So that's what it kind of looks like for seminars and workshops.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great way to get to have that more of a relationship with each team. What is the what was I'm curious what the process was like. So when you start working with a team, do you reach out to them? Do they reach out to you? How does that work?
Yeah. They reach out to me for the most
Okay.
part.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, it is good. And it's typically better that way. I mean, like I have reached out to other teams before, but if you don't want mental performance, typically that's just not gonna work out.
Right.
So it's really nice when the coach is on board and the coach is supporting it because
No doubt.
then the players are going to be more bought in.
100%.
Yeah. So I always prefer if they reach out to me and it's just worked out. So I worked with like a youth baseball team, football, high school soccer team in the area. So those have been the most recent ones. I'll do some on Zoom and virtual, but in person is just always better when you're working with a team.
Right. That makes sense because they obviously get to see their faces, see what their reactions is to different things.
Mhm.
When you work with a team, for example, what because it's obviously a group setting, so it's less one on one, right? What are some of the things that you try to make sure that you help them understand? So when you identify, 4 or 5 topics, like what are the things that you typically like to have them, kind of go through from an exercise standpoint, and kind of how does that process work when you come in?
hmm Well, to start, I really like to work with coach. So I'll be talking with coach about, hey, what is it that you feel like the team needs? And sometimes the coach doesn't even really know what I could offer. So I'll throw out just common challenges that I typically see within that sport and within that age group. And they're usually like, oh yeah, totally agree. Like we need that. A lot of our guys need this. And then I also like to send out a team assessment ahead of time. So just getting what their interests are. I don't want to be talking to them about confidence if they have no interest in learning about confidence. Normally they do, but it's nice to get what coach feels like the team needs. So the needs, and then I like to get the wants of the athletes. That way they're just even more bought in. And then, I think it's always important to make it very relatable to them, making sure we're using examples. I like to tell a lot of stories. I like to make it a little bit interactive. So it's not just like a general classroom setting. Oh my gosh, okay, we have another presentation to listen to. So I like to get them up and moving and make it just really applicable for them.
No,
I think that's important.
Yeah.
That's extremely important. No, I'm saying I think that's extremely important especially when you're already talking about a subject that for the most part, most people don't really want to talk about, right? Exactly. Especially athletes at that point. Like that's why we're kind of going, kind of looking at this, or a coach is bringing you in because he feels it's important, right? But it's also, you could have, half the group that's kind of, on edge about it, right? Because they're uncomfortable talking about this in a situation, even one-on-one. Now you're putting them in a group situation, right? Like this could be more fearful than having to freaking go out there and actually play the game for some people, right? But I think it's extremely important. And I think the way to gauge it, like you said, is you have to understand the team and the atmosphere that you're going into. Do they have any experience with this? Am I talking to the entire team? Am I talking to maybe just the seniors? Am I talking, ages play a role. There's so many like intangibles, I think that would go into it. In terms of that, I think it's also a great thing to do for like a spring setting, or in a piece of summer, right? Kind of bring you in, where guys have been either like hammering away in the weight room, or almost like just switch it up type of thing. Active piece is huge. Right? Like that's just the biggest, that's absolutely, huge when it comes to it, because when they're just sitting there in a classroom setting, right? Or even in an auditorium, like they're going to be out the window like that. Right. So I'm sure you have some of those techniques or some of those skills. What do you see in when you've done these before? What kind of hits home and is really like, you feel like, which point gets across the most when you're working with the teams themselves? That's really like, you can see that aha moment that hits them. What kind of topic or what aspect of it kind of hits home the most?
Yeah, I like to start off with the more general mental skills that everybody can relate to. So I like to hammer home the pressure, the focus. I think focus is really big, especially because they can be working on that in every single aspect of their lives, in a classroom setting, when they get distracted and start daydreaming when the teacher's talking, right?
Right.
So I think I like the focus, the pressure, because everybody feels pressure, and then the mistakes, because mistakes are going to happen. Like those are inevitable. So I like to really start off with those. And then once I get to know the team, how they're responding, their team culture, then we can get into more specifics. Like, for example, a baseball team, maybe their dugout culture is just awful. Okay, well, what do we really
need? Yeah, you're like, what are you guys doing? Right, like, what are you guys doing? Like, you're staring off here, right. You're chewing on seeds, whatever it is. Yeah, that's so funny. I think that's so funny.
Yeah, so then you get into like more like nuances, right? So that's fun when you start to really get to know them. A challenge, though, I will say, when working with teams, is not everybody's bought in, right? You'll have like a group of girls, like maybe 10 of them that are super bought in, and then like half of them are just like, I don't want to be here. Like that's just a given. So you really have to make sure you aren't taking that personally, and you're giving them the information, but ultimately knowing that, hey, it's up to you all to apply it, and I'll just give my attention to the ones that really want to be here.
Makes sense. Yeah, especially if it's that group that, it's just hard, right? Because like when you have that older group, or maybe that senior group, and they're not really bought in, and then the younger group, like they're so intimidated that they won't kind of buy in any facet, even. And then if, like you said, if a coach isn't like, maybe this is something that the athletic director told the coach, hey, you're doing this, right? So now he's not bought in, right? Or she's not bought into it. And now you're kind of like just walking into a hornet's nest.
Yeah,
And you're left kind of just out there like, but I think if you can find that group that you have to hook, the rest of them will kind of follow suit, right? Or that one thing that kind of hits home, and then everybody's like, oh wow, right? Typically, like in this, what do you do it in? Is it like a classroom setting, an auditorium setting?
Usually classroom setting, and then just to start, and then maybe I'll take them out to the track or the weight room, or just to get them in a different environment. But I like to be more controlled, at least that first time, till I can get a feel for them and know what I'm getting myself into. But and coach is, right? So let's say if like AD is forcing it, coach plays a big role too. I've had to get on some coaches. If coach is in the room, one time I had a coach like in the back of the room texting, and then walked out to take a phone call, and I had to tell him, listen, when you do that, that tells all of your players that this isn't important. So if you're going to be in the room, like be engaged and participate. If you don't want to be there, then be out of the room. So then maybe the players will open up even more if you weren't there.
Which they definitely would. There's no doubt.
I always recommend to the coach, like, let me have them just one-on-one. I'll inform you on like the general gist, but let's see what they start opening up about when you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's important. I think that's definitely an important aspect to it, because anytime coach is there, they're not going to let it fly. Like they've probably been sternly talking to at a minimum, by him at some point. So, they're one of his soldiers. It's going to be hard to get them to open up all the time, in front of them. Right. Especially if some of it has to do with coach, like how to handle things that coaches do. Right. That's a big part for players, especially nowadays, I think. Can be hard. Like, why is coach all of a sudden friendly and making jokes, and then all of a sudden all over me, right? Like, what is this? And that's
bipolar coach, the worst ones.
Mm-hmm. Oh, where did Dave go?
Oh, he probably got a phone call. Sometimes when he's on his phone.
Right, yeah.
But I will tell you this, Georgia, like that is where, honestly, if I were to do this, right? Like, hey, I'm the head coach. I'm bringing you in. That first meeting, I want you to sit down with just my coaching staff.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and here's how, look, this is why we're doing it. And I'm there and I'm going to say, you're all bought into this, because if you're not a part of this, you're not a part of anything. So I'm going to lay the law and kind of let them know, like, this is real shit, right? Like, this is real. Okay. Every one of our players are going through something like this individually. Right. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that most of you are kind of aware of who is and who isn't. But for those of you that aren't, this is an opportunity for you to learn how to get that. Because if you can't do this piece, right, and understand and make these connections, this is not like the coaching aspect is not even close, right? Because this is ultimately what it's about. I was having this discussion with a parent over the weekend, and then an assistant coach again yesterday, about connections and people, and like that's how you win, and understanding the mentality and the pulse and everything that's just kind of going on within each one of either your players or your coaches' lives. Like there's more stuff outside of this, but so to give some skills and make them and clue them into the self-awareness piece, right? I think it is absolutely pivotal. Do you see that? Do you see any coaches that kind of like want you to meet just with coaches to start, or then you do? That's awesome. I think that's so cool.
Yeah. And I prefer that too, right? And I want them to know that I'm here for you all. I'm not walking in acting like I'm running the show and I know everything. Like, this is your team, right? Like, Derek, if you brought me in, right? Like, this is your team. Like, I want to know your culture. I want to know how you guys communicate. I want to know what your team needs, even just like values that you guys have.
Right.
And I'll just be like another little slice of the pie there, helping to connect the pieces. But I prefer that when I do meet with the coaches first. And then, I can show them my style too and how I work. And usually once coaches see, especially if it's a sport like football or like men's lacrosse, you need like a strong presence, right? Like they need to know I'm a female, that I can command a room and raise my voice, or else those guys are just going to walk all over me, right? So you guys need to know how I work too.
Right.
Can you guys hear me again or no?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, great. Now I know what happens to other people when they're on their phone with us. Um, the call comes in, then
So that was Derek's guess, yeah.
yeah, the call comes in, and it's like I'm trying to block it, but um, it's it's really it's interesting because one of the things you talked about, like sometimes the kids in that group setting, like sometimes aren't like paying attention, and a lot of times those are probably the people that maybe need it most, right? So that's one of the difficult parts. Do you ever like I'm sure it's frustrating, I'm sure, when you're up there speaking, and obviously there are people that are engaged. Those are people usually who are more dialed in, but I wonder if um you ever do you ever go over to some of the people that like might either be slightly disruptive or not paying attention and pull them aside, like maybe, I don't know, on a break or something like that, and ask them, hey, if there is anything you ever want to talk about, what I mean, like, you could reach out to me directly if it's not something you're not comfortable talking about here. Like, is that something that you ever do, or do you?
Yeah, I usually address it more in a general team setting. So
Okay.
I'll always like make a comment if you want more one-on-one work, really break some of this down in a more personalized way, then yeah, like reach out to me. But with the kids that are maybe like on their phones or just aren't really paying attention, for them, I really like to explain the why and how that's impacting you. Oh, I wonder if you're pulling your phone out and you're texting right now. I wonder how great your focus is and how that translates to practice and on the field. If coach is really breaking something down and then your mind wanders, like how long can you hold your attention for? And so I try to make it applicable to their sport and how if you're doing it in one area of your life, it's probably impacting you in another area of your life. If you don't care about this, I wonder what other things you aren't caring so much about. I try to hit it home that way.
No, that's good. And there's some. I feel like there's some. It's interesting because group session versus small group like stuff and each athlete are different. There are people that are more comfortable speaking in front of other people, and there are people that aren't. Um, so you come in there and you kind of do the group session thing. Like I know for myself as an athlete, like I might I if I needed something, uh I probably wouldn't say it. You know what I mean? Like, even though I'm outward person, like I might speak in general terms in like a group setting like that. But if there was something that was really bothering me, I would. There's no way, at least when I was that age, you know what I mean, that I would have spoke up. You know what I mean? I would not have felt comfortable, and I think that's it. It's an interesting thing because different home dynamics dictate how comfortable people feel, right? So, like for me in high school, I was going through a lot of different things. But you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't really know unless you were like one of my best friends. You would not know it. But I was dealing with a lot of things, and now so it's one of those things that and all kids are dealing with different things. That it's just how they're handling it. And you also have different levels of athletes too. So you have athletes that, like, I went to, and so did Derek. Derek went to, obviously we've talked about this a few times probably, but Derek went to a high school that was small high school like I did, but he had a program at the time where a lot of the athletes were, the most of the athletes were very focused, right? At least with respect to football, right? So they were very focused, and that was the culture. I went to high school where if you came in, most of the guys on that team were probably generally unfocused. And I was locked into what my ultimate goal was, right? To go and play in college and all that
you
kind
were
of
the
stuff.
outlier.
So that would have been a difficult environment for me to speak up in. You know what I mean? Like that would have been hard because those kids who I was friends with, they weren't trying to do, most of them weren't trying to do, actually in my high school case, I would say on my grade and my senior class and the class behind me, there was only one other kid that went on to play in college. That kid, and he lived around the corner of me, and ironically, he was 1 year behind me, and he used to come over when we were kids, and we used to play tackle football together. So I find it ironic that he was the other kid that went on to play. And his mother used to watch us when we were little kids, especially when my parents were getting divorced. His mother was the one to watch us, and we would go out and we'd play tackle. I mean, that's all we would do all day long, like street football,
funny,
tackle
Dave.
football. And
it's funny because
I always find it ironic that he went on. I don't even talk to him anymore, you know, I mean, because we've gone different ways. He played at Montclair State, Derek, by the way. He was a middle linebacker there.
Well, I'm just saying, it's funny that you say that because
very good player.
Senior class, right?
But it's funny because in his grade, he was the only guy to go on, you know, and play in college, and we were around each other a lot as kids, you know what I mean? And we played together. But it's interesting because that's a different dynamic. So my guess is the better programs are going to give you a call. You know what I mean? You're not going to get an average program probably or below average program that gives you a call unless it's a coach taking over and trying to build, right? That's my guess, right? Like who's going to come to Georgia Miller to get help? And me and Derek talk about this a lot too, is that like sometimes when we're preaching to things, we're preaching to the choir in a sense that the guys or girls that are going to be bought in are already bought in. They're just going to take this information and go to a different level with it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, do you feel that
I think it should be an athletic department?
There is a gap that you can bridge, and I don't know what the answer is, but it kind of came to my head here because I feel like there is that gap, right? Like in a lot of places, and maybe even Derek's team, like, right? There might have been a lot of guys that, like, he maybe had a handful of guys that wanted to play in college, and the rest of those guys just wanted to be great high school football players, and he might have had different goals and dreams than those guys, too. So,
well, that's what I was trying to say, Dave.
Those things can be difficult for the elite athlete, even though they're buying in because their buddies will razz them, especially with boys. And then also maybe the bridging the gap in teams that really have issues and trying to. So is there an ability to bridge the gap in that, or do they have to have a certain want to in order to get to the point where you can actually, you know, provide help?
You know, I think at that point, and I've worked with, this was maybe 2 years ago, I worked with a football team. They were definitely from a more low economic status. And Derek, like you're saying, it was the AD that had called me and not necessarily the head coach. And with that team, I took a much different approach, right? It wasn't about performance enhancement necessarily. It was about right. It was about understanding each other. And it was like where everybody comes from, because there were a couple outliers like you, Dave, and then everybody else who was going through some serious stuff at home that I couldn't even imagine, right? So it was a lot of our conversations were about overcoming adversity, and we were giving life examples, right? And I know like a lot of those guys wouldn't be open to sharing, so we talked in more general. And then I remember specifically one day I gave them like a worksheet, and I was like having them apply like more personal examples on there. I'm like, I'm not going to have you share this.
But that's where you really were like blown away by like what you actually saw.
That's great. That's a great point. And that's, I think that's important because it's in group setting things it'd be really good. And obviously, you know, it's a lot more inexpensive way for the coaches to reach a lot of guys or girls and get you in there and you get some of that stuff. But and obviously when you get people more one-on-one or even smaller group, that really allows you to kind of dive into certain things. When athletes bring up, so you talked a little bit about adversity, like what are the hardest things from an adversity standpoint that you've found that athletes have to be able to overcome? I mean, is it just a confidence thing? Is it something beyond that? But handling adversity seems to be the number one thing that athletes have to be able to overcome in order to be successful. And they have to do it a lot, right? And I'm not just talking about at home, that's part of it, but you know, on the field as well. And what are the important things from that standpoint, like helping them overcome adversity? Because that could be a difficult thing, because I feel like that's a long-term thing. Like it takes a lot of steps to slowly get yourself to be able to handle it, and you might have some breakthroughs here and there, but probably takes time for most people.
Yeah, You know, a concept that I really like to dive deep into is adjust, don't judge. So a lot of the times it's easy for athletes to sit, complain, dwell. I wish this wasn't happening. Judging the situation, it just leaves you stuck in the past, right? And I'm not saying we got to be all positive and I got this, I can overcome it. I'm never telling my athletes that.
No.
But let's be adaptable and let's see how we can adjust our ways, and let's start finding some solutions here. Like if you're driving down the road and you pop a tire, you're going to sit in your car and cry about it all day? No, you're going to get out, you're going to change it, you're going to make a phone call to have somebody come change it. Like you're going to take care of it and then be on your way, right? So I think the number one trait that I tell all my athletes to have is you have to be adaptable, because there's going to be things that don't go your way. There's going to be some sort of adversity that hits you, and you got to be able to adjust and work with it versus like sit and dwell with it. So we're taking that concept and we're applying it to a lot of the teams that I'm working with, but also just all the athletes. Like, how did you adjust this week? How are you adaptable? And what ways were you finding yourself sitting and dwelling and judging?
Absolutely. That's interesting. So adapt, don't judge. I mean, adjust, don't judge. And it's interesting. So, okay, you talk about adjust. What does adjustment mean? Like change your mind frame, change your situation, like you might tell one kid to adjust and all of a sudden he shows up at a new high school. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's today's world. That's the only reason I said that. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like I handled my adversity. I'm at a new high school. But no, like what is adjust and tell me first, like what does adjust mean for an athlete?
This is a good example. So basketball player down here in Miami, he's a junior. He's on a very good high school team. He doesn't get a lot of playing time though. And his mom called me because she's like, he wants to transfer and he's just so in his head, overthinking, really frustrated like every day. And the first thing that I told this kid when I met with him, I said, I'm going to ask you to do something for me. I want you to accept the fact that you are at this school and transferring is not an option. I say, give us a month. Just let's not think of transferring as an option for 1 month together, but let's work with this situation that you are in and let's give you the skills to adapt to it and make it work for you. So then another example was he felt like coach was, he wasn't a favorite. Like coach didn't like him. Coach was always on him. And then we started shifting. We're like, okay, well, you can't change what coach is saying, doing, how he's telling you things, his tone of voice. Can't change that. So we got to make the situation work for you somehow. So can we adjust how you're receiving it? And we did that. So we took away the tone of voice. We said, let's filter through the tone of voice, just find the words. Are there anything that he's saying that can actually help you, that you can just make it about basketball and not about you? So that was a good way that he adjusted. So he adjusted how he was receiving feedback. And then we accepted the situation that, okay, this is my situation. How am I going to make it work for me versus run away from it, just like a lot of athletes do nowadays. And then it was the teammates. His teammates were talking so much trash to him. And then I was like, okay, but what are you doing with that? You know, are you talking trash back or are you playing timid and scared now? So then we, instead of receiving it and going, okay, now I can't make mistakes, then we said, throw some trash talk back at him. And it was just like those little things, right, that we adjusted in his process. And then he ended up staying at the school, right? And we said, this situation just made you 10 times more prepared for the next level. That way you aren't college hopping every year and you don't have 4 schools by the end of 4 years.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's a difficult thing that kids have to be able to understand too. Like, there's a difference between kids bullying each other and kids getting on each other, and it's a hard line for them. They don't really kind of understand the difference because everything now has become bullying to an extent. So, and I'm not saying it's wrong that like everything has, like, I get it. Like you don't want like a weaker kid physically getting bullied by a bigger kid. I mean, those are obviously clear bullying situations. Mm-hmm. But when other guys get on other guys, and girls do it in a different way, but like how they kind of get on each other and being able to handle that. I've seen that affect some kids. Like they're like, why are they doing that to me? You know what I mean? And I thought he was my friend. Okay. This happens a lot with middle school kids. I thought this person was they change best friends every week. So, not only they change girlfriends every week at that age, they change best friends every week. And boyfriends, I guess girls have, change boyfriends every week. So it's one of these things, although Derek's daughter's not allowed to date anybody till she's ready to get married. So that's just the rule there.
25.
Right, Derek?
30.
30.
No, until Daddy approves. Until Daddy approves.
Yeah, definitely. Middle school is definitely really hard.
But it's one of these things where they have to figure some of those things out. Are there strategies that athletes can use? And in high school, this happens in a slightly different. So middle school is busting each other's chops. High school might be busting each other's chops. High school, sometimes there becomes like resentment, right? Because you talked about playing time with the one kid. So let's say if you're on the flip side, one of the kids who was a better player playing a lot, sometimes kids will feel like, oh man, like maybe I shouldn't like go that hard on this kid in practice because, you know what I mean? I don't want him to think I'm like taking advantage of him. So that mental game of the relationships between other people on their team is much more sensitive than most people imagine, and the coach obviously has a large part to do with how to manage that, I think. But talk about what you think kind of are some of the things that have to be done to make that interpersonal relationship better within your teammates.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is not taking it so personal and helping athletes see that, right? Like, are you making it about you? And what's the purpose of them saying that? Is it to make you feel bad? And that's a bullying situation, but
right.
Also, is it to just raise the overall level of competitiveness? And are you taking it personal, or are you rising to the challenge and trying to challenge them right back? So I think that's step number one. And I was literally last night, one of my basketball guys, he's a sophomore. He's on a really good high school team, the travel team down here. They're all getting recruited. And he was like, I got a text through this awful practice that I had. And I was like, okay, like none of my teammates were passing to me. I was like, okay, well, like, why do you think that is? Like, I don't know. And I was missing these shots, and then I wasn't really trusting my stuff. And I was like, okay, so you're telling me you were missing shots, you weren't trusting yourself. I'm assuming you probably didn't look very confident. So can you blame your teammates for not passing to you? And he was like, no. He's like, I know I definitely did not have that confident presence. I'm like, okay, I wouldn't pass to you either. Like, let's stop taking it so personal. And what can you do about the situation? Do you need to be more of an advocate for yourself? Do you need to be talking more? Do you need to be going up to coach more? Do you need to be throwing a punch back, so to speak? Right. But I think a lot of the kids nowadays are just like trying to take it, and we got to fight back a little bit, push back. Like, that's okay to do. And then from a team standpoint, right, I think like culture starts from the top. So I'd be curious what you all have done in the past, just and how you navigate that with your players, and how you kind of find that balance.
Yeah. So to navigate the relationships between the athletes.
Right. Like if they're bullying.
I try to set. I mean, the way I always do it is, I set the tone as far as what their expectations are. Like, these are our expectations of our program. This is how I expect you to treat each other. And then I watch what goes on, and then I see if there's a situation or situation is brought to me. I'll investigate the situation, and then I'll address it accordingly. And if like I deem it to be like, the hardest ones are the borderline situations. Yeah. Those are always the hardest one. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What'd you say there?
No, I didn't.
For some reason, I can't hear Derek. That must be. I hear Georgia clear. I can't hear Derek. I don't know what's going on. No, this will be the last day I ever do my phone again. But
yeah.
But yeah, I think so Derek, if you're chiming in, just wave your hand up and I'll let you go because I can't hear you. So but so what my thought process is like when there's borderline situations that probably takes a little bit of investigation to figure out, and a lot of times assistant coaches can help you with that. Like they'll tell you where where there's something that they see. Derek always was really good with that, with me at least. Like hey, you might not know this, but this was going, this is going on or something like that. He was really good with that. And then going in when there is an issue, like I'm always big as far as like with respect to bullying. If I sense something bullying wise going on, I address the whole team immediately, like what the expectations are, what the consequences will be if bullying continues. And they're usually very rash situations. Basically, I just tell them like you don't adhere to the fact that like you're gonna pick on some kid over here and you keep doing it over and over again. You're just not gonna be on the team. I don't care who you are. I don't care how good you are. But as far as interpersonal things, I try to like bring them to the office. What's going on? I always like, in my last, I would say 10 years as a coach, I always had an assistant coach with me because when I was a young head coach,
oh yeah, you have to have that. Like you have to have an assistant.
Didn't really
coach.
understand that as much, like how people could take things. So all of a sudden I'd be like, principal wants to talk to me, and I'm like, become she said, you know what I mean? So so I always have last 10, I actually maybe 15 years, 10 years. Yeah, last 10 years from like basically 2010, 2011 to when my last year of coaching high school, I always have someone with me in those conversations. Even with youth sports, I do the
always
same
seem to
thing.
Be that coach, by the way, Jordan.
I always make sure one of my assistants are around. Obviously, we don't have closed door meetings with youth kids, but like if I'm talking to a kid, I always make sure that there's an assistant there within the earshot so you can hear what I'm saying. So I think those things are important because there's a huge issue with parents and what the kids say to their parents and what is actually the truth. Okay. And it's usually there isn't in between. Like when a kid goes to his parent, there might be something that a coach might have done, or maybe he was a little mean or something like that. Could happen. My thing is always before we talk about what your issue is. Like I'm talking like youth, even high school. Before you tell me what your issue is with a coach, like if a kid says to, or a parent says, did the coach abuse you physically? Did the coach take you behind a woodshed and riot act you so bad, beyond like correcting your performance, yelling, which is going to happen, take and be overly extensive in that process. And everybody knows what that looks like, berating and extensively. If those two things weren't there, then I usually am like, well, if there wasn't an actual abuse situation, you as the athlete has to figure out what the coach wants of you. And you got to figure out how to perform to that level. And if you're not currently at that level, you got to go ask him what things you need to do to improve. Okay. And if he says simple thing like in football, your hands, you struggle to catch the football, right? Ask him, let's say he says, you struggle to catch the ball, you need to be able to do that, or you need to be able to extend your hands more or catch the ball, whatever it is. You have to figure out how you're going to get that done and do it if you want the coach to change your viewpoint of your performance. Because otherwise he will always view you in the same light. Same thing with behavior. So if you're a kid that behaves badly when something happens to you, if you don't change the way that you act after something badly happens, they'll always view you in that same way. I say that to my own son, like he deals with that emotionally sometimes, and I say that if you want them to not say that thing to you over and over again, you're going to have to change your mind around that, and you're going to have to do things. Go get a drink of water, take a deep breath. If deep breath doesn't work, which a lot of younger kids, it doesn't work as well. I honestly, I've been around it. We tell kids all the time to take deep breaths. I'm not just talking about my kid. You know, kids crying. That does not do it. They need 5 minutes. Might need 10 minutes. Like, well, they don't want to come out, but they might need 5 minutes to go sit on the sideline. And parents have to start to understand that that doesn't mean that the coach is mad at you because he's taking you out. He's trying to help you regulate your emotions, okay, in the best way that that coach knows. He's not, not all of them are born psychologists, right? So you take them out so those are the kind of things that I try to do, which I think has really helped a lot. Now, I can tell you, there are parents that do not like the way that I do things. Definitely. They do not like do not like the way that I do things. A lot of them don't like the way that I talk. I'm very direct. I will be direct. Like, I'm always going to be direct. I'll always talk with you after, you know what I mean? But I do not want, and I learned this as I got older and older, I don't like mixed messaging with kids and with with young kids and older kids. I don't like coming in and saying, "Hey, it wasn't, it's not really that bad, it's okay." And then all of a sudden they're benched, you know what I mean? And they don't know why the hell that is. I like to tell them, like, you got it, like, the ball is coming in your area and it touches your hands, you should catch it. Like, I'm very direct with that. And they're like, "But it was high, it was low, it was wide." Am I still there or no?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
back. Yeah,
good.
you're back now. Ignored the call. It's just calls. I get it.
But
Can you hear
that's a great example of adjusting, not judging, right? Like, changing your ways, because it does say a lot.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think each parent is going to ultimately, like, kind of interpret or take the coach for what it is. It's why I think a lot of guys think that they can just get away with that preseason meeting, right? Where, hey, this is the expectations of the program, where the head coach is standing up there. He's kind of giving his whole entire spiel and, kind of going at it from there. But that is a very different coach than when you go to a practice and you see it, right, firsthand. And this is kind of how it is, or this is how how you communicate on a field, right? I think that openness needs to kind of be explained in that initial meeting, but also at the same time, hey, our practices are open. You, by all means, come watch a practice. And I will tell you right now, you're going to see a very different head coach than the one that's here right now. And then based off of certain situations, you'll see a different coach on game day or whatever that message is. It's easier with, and I think you do it every year, because every year you have a new group of parents and it has to be constantly construed. And it's also like, that's when sometimes you see parents, you speak to them when their kid's a freshman, and then all of a sudden, like 4 years later, when they're a senior, hopefully you as a coach have developed and changed and kind of grown in your process too. And you're not still the same person. You are, but you aren't, if that makes sense. And anybody that I think understands coaching and how coaches work, you understand that you're always going to be who you are, but the delivery or certain nuances are going to change based off of what your team makeup is or the dynamics around it. Maybe there's things that are changing within the school, or the socioeconomics of your town that you're coaching in are changing. There's outside parameters. Maybe there's a new school philosophy that's coming across, and now you have to kind of preach that message that's now coming from above you as the coach. Ultimately your program, right? But it's the organization or the overall big picture, right? I have to explain that a lot of times, and it's not that I'm throwing the higher ups under the bus. I'm just explaining, like, to them, because ultimately, even as a head coach, you're a soldier in terms of you're a part of the school themselves or the town or whatever that is. You're a piece of the puzzle. There are things that now you have to instill that maybe you're not on board with, but you still have to get it across that this is what it is and I support it, right? Otherwise, you're just creating a true hornet's nest for everybody. And now it's all of this. I think that boots on the ground approach of, hey, my doors are open, come have a conversation, come see it firsthand, because what I'm telling you in this meeting is going to be a direct correlation. Like, I'm not up here smoking mirrors, where some guys are, right? And then you get called out right away. That I don't think is just a healthy approach. I think like Dave's always been, this is what it is. This is who I am. If you like, some of you are going to like it. Some of you aren't. Ultimately, it's for the good at the end of it. But you're not going to go and be something you're not, right? Because you're just creating more havoc down the road, right? So this might be for you. This might not be. Either way, it's all good. Like, let's just make it happen, all right? Mm-hmm. And if it's not, then okay. I'm not going to chase you, or, I'm not trying to force something that doesn't want to be. I tell it with the kids in recruiting, right? Like, go to a program that they're upfront, they're honest about it. They're not going to smoke and mirrors or bullshit you, like, because it's just
playing time and starting.
That creates more problems so far down the road that it just, that snowball effect, that domino effect. Like, why are we doing that? We're not. Why are we wasting everybody's time?
You could be a nice person and still be direct. Okay.
Absolutely. But it gets misconstrued a lot sometimes, right? Kids or parents or like other, even assistant coaches, they take things so personal, right? How many times do you find yourself saying, hey, this isn't like about who you are. This is in how you either do things or your delivery or just the way you went about it. Like, there's so much of that. And if there's one thing I've seen in, years of coaching now, it's that so many athletes, parents, people just take things so personal when it's not meant to be that way at all, right? And understand that it's not about the individual. As a coach, and especially a head coach, I have to do what's best for the good of the group, right?
There's a lot more.
Ultimately, what it is.
That's a big point. Say that again. You're doing things for the good of the group. Like, that's a big point that a lot of parents don't understand.
As a head coach, right? And that's where you have to, I feel, rely on your assistants. Mm-hmm. They handle individuals. Hey, you coach the receivers. You need to know the ins and outs of every single one of those kids. As a head coach, yes, that's the good ones and the great ones know every kid inside and out. But that's really freaking hard to do, especially with football, where you have large rosters, constant turnover, change. You got to rely on your assistants to let you know, right? Like Dave said, like the guy that's in the room, right? Or, hey, so-and-so's got this going on. Like, let's kind of pull back on him today. Or, hey, this one, you need to chin check this one, right? Because that's really hard for a head coach to keep tabs on all that stuff.
You got to have the guy that you trust too. Mm-hmm. So, like, I trust Derek. You know what I mean? When I was at another place, there was a guy that I actually didn't even know the guy ever, but I learned to trust him, and I realized he was a trustworthy guy. And then there was the most successful place that I was at, where I turned around a terrible program. And I didn't know it right away because I brought in guys that I thought I trusted. Okay. Mm-hmm. But like people who were friends. Okay.
Dave, I heard a really good thing. I heard a really good thing the other day. It said, it was kind of along the lines of, just because someone's your ally doesn't mean that they're in your corner, right? Like, just because they're on board with the bigger picture, right, in terms of it, doesn't mean that they directly support you and all of your decisions. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially in a team setting, I would kind of say, like, all right, I want the team to win, but I don't like the way he's doing things. You know what I mean? Like, so they're on board and I want the best for the kid. But guess what? Like, I'm not about that. Right. So, and that's why I think so many guys don't like being quote leaders, right? Or you just see guys that don't want all of that control, because all of those things you could still do everything right. And you know what? It only takes that one naysayer or that one little comment or, a body language. Like, kids look around when you're talking as a head coach and see what the other coaches are doing. Or
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
it's why when I hear Greg Schiano talk about vertical alignment, right? I don't know if he's the best example based off wins and losses.
But it's a great, his vertical alignment thing is good.
Like, at least his guys are loyal because he has everybody aligned. Everybody's speaking the same language.
And when they're not, he gets rid of them. Okay.
See you later.
Because you don't know. And this goes for players to an extent. Like, you don't get rid of players per se. I'm not a huge advocate of that, but like as far as their mindset, right? So
right.
Whereas coaches, I 100% think like if they're
talk
not
about vertical, the buy-in. Like, right? Yeah. Like how bought in are they? Right.
Coaches are adults, so if they, it's harder to change adults' mindsets to gravitate to your thought process if they don't already align, right? And you don't in coaching. I heard Trent Dilfer. I don't know if you saw he was interviewed by. It might have been the damn. I can't remember, but it was like this past week. It was great, really interesting interview, and he was talking about like, and this is a guy who played in the pros for 14 years. And when he was in college under the transfer portal, he came in during COVID, and then all of a sudden became really a big thing, and the transfer portal and NIL. And he talked about how when he got fired, he knew he was going to get fired in that third year. And what he said was really interesting. He said that everything's became transactional, okay? Mm-hmm. And he didn't really enjoy the transactional process, and he realized that this was less and less enjoyable for him. And it wasn't really just because of the losing part, and he said it straight up, up front, but he said the transactional part, like, I develop a kid, he leaves, at first he did really good with recruiting, and he would develop them, they do really well, and they were gone. And then all of a sudden now he was left with, trying to get transfers from other people with players that were not as good as the ones he originally had, and all this kind of stuff. But the bigger point of it was, he said in the NFL, 14 years in the NFL, and the NFL is transactional. And having been an agent, in the NFL, it's very transactional, right? So he said he did not enjoy, he obviously loved playing football. There were guys that he got along with great. He won a Super Bowl, but he never loved the transactional nature of the NFL. And for him, he did not want to go back to that. That's why he went right back to high school. He said he didn't want to try and find another college job, as an assistant or whatever. He didn't want to be in that transactional space anymore because it brought him back to what it was like when he was in the NFL, and he did not love it. Now, there's plenty of coaches, he said, that love it. Like, there are guys that thrive on it. He was not that kind of person. And my point on a lot of things is a lot of things are now transactional, right? Yep. Like, sports are transactional, which is kind of like, it is what it is, right? And high school is much less transactional than any other sporting situation, even though there's a lot of transferring now in high school, but it's the least transactional of all of these sporting areas, other than maybe D3 sports. And that could be changing, because if you get really good, you might move up in D3, right? So, but those are the two areas that are less transactional. And I know you got to go, but I would love for you to kind of talk about that part, because that's a very tough thing for coaches. It was, I learned that when some of my friends kind of were like, and I got a guy who ended up becoming one of my best friends, was a guy I didn't even know, because you know what? I always thought he was in it for the kids, to get them better, and he was not transactional. And he ended up being one of my best assistant coaches, but he became, like, before I had Derek, when I was there, he was that. Like, he would tell me straight up. He would say when he thought maybe I was wrong. We would argue on the field sometimes, but he would go back inside. We would hug it. We'd give each other a hug. Like, he was amazing. He was amazing. Like to this day, Dan Farina, he was amazing, amazing coach. And I'm not surprised that he's had a lot of success. And by the way, knew nothing about, even though he played high school football, knew nothing about coaching football before he started coaching with me. So like that's what I'm saying. Like growth is what what you want to make of it. And being loyal and being someone that another guy could trust goes so much farther than people can imagine. You can learn the X's and O's. You can learn those things. I'm not saying you're going to be, you know, the most elite coach ever, but you could be a really great coach without ever knowing the nuances of everything that goes on within the scheme part of it. So anyway, I'll let you have the final comment on everything because I know you got to run.
Yeah. Well, there's a quote that I really like. It says, "Look to be transformational, not transactional." And I think especially with college sports nowadays and the transfer portal, it's so transactional. It's what can this team give me in the NIL deals? And it's so hard for the fan base now too to rally against a team because there's different players every single year. It's like they don't even know the team anymore and who to root for, right? There's no culture. And what I really respect about IU's coach, and obviously it ended up working out very well for them, they have such a process and they really focus on building culture. And it was, sure, maybe we blew this team out, but did we stick to our process? No? Okay, they're still getting their asses reamed out, right? If they lost a game, did we stick to our process? Okay, then those are the things we are reinforcing. Those are good things, right? It wasn't result focused. It was very culture, process focused, effort focused. And I just think it's really easy to lose that nowadays with the NIL. And that's why so many coaches are stopping coaching, because it's like, it's too much. It's not about the process, the culture, the building just young men anymore and young women. So look to be transformational, not transactional is where I'm leaving it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. You're
Thanks,
awesome.
Georgia.
Yeah, awesome as always.
So we will see you in a month.
Yes, you radiate positive energy. We'll see you soon.
All right.
Thanks, Georgia.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye. All right, that was really good. I have no idea how to adjust this from on my phone, so we'll have to go with this angle, but weird angle right here, which will probably cut me out in the shorts, probably. But hey, we'll deal with it. I would like to continue this part of the conversation because I think it's really an interesting thing because, like I watched the Dilfer thing. I thought kind of struck a chord because obviously, he said it. He goes, in the eyes of wins and losses, I was a failure as a college football coach.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
He's like, but there are things that we were able to put in place that will last a long time beyond, that he was able to do that will last beyond, me, which is good. He said, I feel really good about that part. But the part that, we talked about how that part was very difficult for him. And now, he's back in high school. I think that it's really, really interesting. And I think that, I don't want to pick on this part, but I think there's a learning curve in sports because we've talked about this a lot. Sports was basically, you went, even in your high school team, yes, your culture was different. Let me go to the majority, not the minority, which was your culture, right? Your culture was the minority, right? Really good.
Well,
really
that's
good.
what I was trying to, like, when you couldn't hear me, I was trying to say, like, of my senior class, right? Like when I graduated, there were 8 football players. That's it, right? Like, because it was a small school, right? So there was only 8 seniors on the team my senior year. 5 of us played college football. That's
the minority.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's where you have to kind of understand. And then now look, the following year, there were more seniors, right? More talented, yet only 5 out of 15. And that's a lot, but only one, or actually of those 5 that actually played at the next level, none of them stuck around for all 4 years of college. You know what I'm saying? So
so that was a different culture than your team, right?
Beyond different. Both went to the state finals. Both our teams lost, but it was so different in that their focus was on more of what football did for them, right? Like they loved, and look, they were a light switch team. They worked their tails off, and when it was football time, but when it wasn't football time, they went just as hard off the field. And that's where more of their enjoyment came from, right?
Mhm.
Like they wanted to ultimately win the game so that it was a better party, right? My group was, and this is where
I think I went to college with a lot of guys at fairly, obviously, all scholarships, where I played, even though it was FCS, and we were transitioning to Division I, I guess, towards the end, but all scholarships. And I could tell you that there were classes, and maybe even my class, where half those guys wanted to win. They worked their tails off. It's not like, I mean, I don't want people on the outside to understand. Like, they don't really understand what college football is. Like, we worked our asses off. But I could tell you that most of our guys were like, hey, when the day is done that you're done with college football, they already knew that was the end, and they were okay with that. So, they'd party just as hard on Saturday. It was one of the things that bothered me my senior year. It was one of the things that bothered me because I although eventually I started to take charge, even though I wasn't a captain, but I thought it bothered me at first because I had to figure out how to be a leader without being the captain.
That was what I was getting to, was the reason that the coaches and everybody outside of, obviously the locker room, I'd like to, they didn't understand that who that class really was until like my group was gone, because we were always keeping them in check. Like we knew we weren't going to be successful unless these guys did exactly what they needed to do. So we spent more time on that aspect of the team of, you're not doing that, or, hey, we're leaving now. Right. Whereas once all of us went and graduated, now, I remember my former coaches like messaging me when I was at Sacred Heart, like, dude, like these guys are off the rails. And I'm like, sorry, they've always been that way, but we kept it in check so that it didn't go awry. Right now it's kind of going awry. And they were also really talented, so they got away with a lot of that too. Like they were just really fucking good that they didn't have to do shit, and they would still win a lot of games, but ultimately like came back to bite them in the long run. But that was one of those things of like,
point.
You know what I'm saying? Like they hid behind their talent for so long. And again, not that they didn't work hard, right? Or not that they weren't a part of it. It's just that other shit was more important at the end of the day, even though they wanted to win just as much, like that it ultimately came back to get them. But as that older group, we kept them in check and in line, because we weren't going to be successful without them, especially at a small school like that, where that was the bulk of the roster, was that grade, right? So we had to each we almost divvied it up. Like, you take care of this guy, I got this guy, you get this one. You know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't that do it this way, or it wasn't a berating, because we were all ultimately friends too.
It has nothing. I was going to say, it has nothing to do with like who.
No, we were. I mean, look, if we were hanging out, we were all there. You know what I'm saying? Like it was all
like they
of us.
should have been champions, is what you're saying.
Like they should have been. They should have 2 rings. You know what I'm saying? Like easily. And maybe if we tightened it up even more, they have 2 rings. But it just never clicked for them, and they enjoyed the off the field stuff way more than they enjoyed like the on the field stuff, which for me, that's why none of them made it through college, like in terms of continued to play or whatever. Now look, they're all doing their thing and everybody's all good with everything it is, but dude, it would still have been really nice to have a ring for myself, or then to them to have 2, but that's just not, it wasn't their makeup. And we didn't have somebody to come in and talk to everybody about that, the road and the mental side of how things are going and which way they were going and all those kind of things, like a Georgia, right? That, because my coaches would have been all over that. Like, let's bring it in, talk about it, even though we really had a high level culture where I was. I think that's one of the hardest things when you take over a new program, like to bring in, you bring in a Georgia and you making them aware of this. And now they're kind of looking at it like, wow, this was really, like, we really have a lot of work to do. And it has nothing to do by definition with what the sport actually is. This isn't an XO problem. This isn't a talent problem. This is how we go about our day to day. And ultimately, like those little things of like, you know, hey, when we're in the weight room, clean up the weight room, right? Or, hey, make sure that you have sneakers. And because we told you, you have to have sneakers. Like if it's those little things that happen like off the field that affect every little bit of what goes on the field, right? Like just watch some team warm up. Is it like that? That can tell you so much, right? Like, you know what I mean? About the team, the culture. Are the assistant coaches paying attention? Are they bullshitting on the side? Are they, you know what I'm saying? Like, are they interacting? Do your assistant coaches know every kid's name, not just their position? Like, to me, those are the little things that separate it. But some people don't believe in that. They don't think it does. To me, it 100% does.
It's funny because what you just echoed to me is what exact thing when Powell Park got built up. Like, Elijah St. Hilaire was part of the group that went 4-6. They were, 0-8 as freshmen. You know what I'm saying? And they went 4-6 was a gigantic accomplishment for that team, right? They were really the leaders to all the garbage, right? And then
Absolutely.
They trained the class behind them who ran with it.
You set the standard, and it's why you see teams like I always say, winning breeds winning. So you see certain like an old Japan.
Yeah. So here's what's interesting about it, Derek. So here's what's interesting. And I think you find this interesting. So the next team was a team that went to the state final. Okay. They had a select group of seniors who were very good, very strong leaders, but not a ton of them. And the group behind them, okay, was the talented, athletic group. That was the group that 3 of them started as freshmen, okay? Right. Literally. So they were the talented group. They were always our darlings, even though they had some super tough guys and some great athletes, but they also enjoyed the good life, right? And they were so talented. And so they supported the group in front of them by providing the talent. But I always thought, like, gosh, like they bought in, they were great, they were all bought in and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't feel like enough of them would go to the wall beyond what we asked them to do there. You know what I'm saying? So ultimately, I think the same exact thing. I think if that group was as bought in as the group ahead of them, they would have won the state championship. They would have had a chance to beat. Summit was a great team. They would have had a chance to beat Summit. Okay. But I think, the next year, they just walloped everybody right from the get-go. Boom, boom, boom. 45 points, 40 points. No. And the whole time we always felt like they weren't achieving as much, but it was hard to tell them because they were walloping everybody. They went from a team winning a lot of close games the year before, I would say overachieving as a unit, you know what I mean? And should have, if those younger guys who were such great athletes had kind of took things as seriously as the group ahead of them, they probably could have had a chance to win that game. Not that, that was not a given, but had a better chance. And they just, I think, thought in their head, now it's our turn. We're going to win no matter what. Like, we're that good. And then they ran into we beat Hasbrouck Heights the year before in a big upset. Well, Hasbrouck Heights was pissed off. Like, this is a perennial powerhouse program. Right? So they were, we tried to tell them, like, this isn't, like, you guys were the underdogs. Now you're the one they're trying to knock off.
Now you're hunted.
Now they're hunting you. Now you've been smoking all these other teams because we were huge. We were huge and we were athletic. I mean, we were. And we had a quarterback that was eventually going to become a Division I player who was a younger guy. So he was starting to come into his own. And it was so interesting because the same exact thing happened. And then Hasbrouck Heights beat us in this shootout game. Like, they came down. They came right down the field, scored. We run right down the field, back and forth, back and forth. And the thing I always thought they lacked was defense because it required the ability to lock in like the other group had done the year before, and they were relied on to be the kind of explosive athletes, right? And now they had to grind it out on defense too. You know, those guys
Right.
had a lot of them were allowed to play kind of more offensive roles, and now they really had to be defensive guys too. And even though they were tough, like if you would say, okay, you know, getting a fight, those kids would, you know, they were tough. They were tough kids. But in the football game, they weren't as used to adversity, right? And they just were walloping people. Like I remember when we played Saddlebrook, who had lost to the year before in overtime. Like they were up like 35-7 at halftime or 42. It was so hot. They were just like, dude, this team last year was great. They're supposed to be great again. We kill them. Like we're gonna kill everybody. And Hasbrook Heights beat us, and they beat us good. Like they just kept scoring. You know what I mean? And I remember
Right.
there was a moment where my offensive tackle, who was a stud, okay, was like getting his butt kicked by the Hasbro Heights lineman that was a stud. They lined him up over him. They put him right over him, and he couldn't do shit with this kid. Okay, and this kid kicked his ass, and not kicked his ass in the way that you would think. You know what I'm saying? Like he didn't drive it
Right.
back, meaning like he would stalemate him. He couldn't get him off the ball, right? And then the other side of the ball, he was driving him. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I just thought that was. I was like, wow, I'm not sure now. You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure. And that we talked about it all year, but now we knew. And in playoffs, Cranford, who we smoked the year before, now we had them ironically in the first round, and we were the favorite, and they were the underdog, and they beat us in the same way that Heights did. Shootout. We were shocked that they scored on us. Not me and the coaches, but like we could. I felt like I could never convince them that it was gonna be a war. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know when you're
No
sometimes
doubt.
talking to a group and you're just like, I love by the way, they're the guys that you would love to, as an adult, love to hang out with. They're cool guys, you know what I'm saying? They listen, if you were to get a street fight, they'd be with you, you know what I mean? Like they're great guys, they're great people. But it was almost like they almost had most of them a better background than the groups before them. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, but it was just they by the time they got a chance to respond, it was too late. Once they really realized, oh shit, we're not going to have a chance to go back to stage. They were down like 28-7, and all of a sudden, second half, you know, they're balling. I'm like, dude, like we can't get close enough. We just can't like you got two quarters. Yeah, we scored like 20 points or something in the second. It was too late. And they already had like 42. It was like 42-28 or something, or 42-21. Like we could not, you know, then you start to make mistakes, right? Like you throw a pick that you wouldn't throw because now you're trying to score, you know, so fast. And it's very interesting because your point about the class behind you, I actually seen it live. Like I seen how that could happen on the coaching side, not as the athlete side, but on the coaching side. And it's kind of like a helpless feeling, you know, as a
Right.
coach. Like you pride yourself as a coach is like, we built this team up, and they were literally like, I don't know, 7-0. And, you know, the papers are writing, they've won like I don't know how many home games in a row, but it was like for Pal Park, like whatever the record was, it broke whatever record, right? And they're writing about that. And, you know, no one beats us at home. And then Heights beat us at home. And in the playoffs, we got beat at home. I thought it was so kind of, when you think back, it's like ironic. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that team everybody was like, this is going to be the inauguration of Pal Park's going to win the championship. You know what I mean? And I always felt like I failed at some point because obviously you look back at the record, they were great. They were ranked number 9 in North Jersey still, even though they lost that game because they just had mollywopped so many quote unquote good teams early. You know, and Heights happened to have a team that was a phenomenal. I think they might have won that year. So, you know, but anyway, it's so interesting the psychology of it all, and like
Absolutely.
and what changed it. And your coaches, like I always thought Farina was the one who would tell me all the time that he would tell me, he's like, I don't know. He would just say it to me. He's like, I don't know. Like he felt great about the other group, and he would say, I don't know. He loved the 4 and 6 group. Like if you were to ask him, maybe his favorite group might be them because they went through the shit. Like literally went through the shit, you know? And it was I always thought was so interesting was um I said that those kids would be the first kid, like if we went to the state championship, the kids who will be sitting in the front row are those kids that went 4 and 6. And you
No
go
doubt.
there and guess who was there? Like in the front row. Like that's who those kids were. You know what I'm saying? The 4 and 6 team. Those kids were not as talented. Obviously Elijah was talented. They had a couple of talented kids, but they were just tough kids. Like they're the kids that, you know what? They became police officers, and you know that that guy's going to be a great police officer. Like he's like you could trust him to do everything. Like he would not take corruption, but he would know what corruption looked like because he grew up in it. You know what I'm
And he'd
saying?
call
Like
it out.
he could call it out because he grew up in it, and then he knew how to change the mindset. And it's very and then like we talk about like with even with our own club, like how we are. I've become more straightforward on these things because parents today, kind of circling back, parents today, so many kids are playing sports, and a lot of them didn't have success themselves at higher levels. And now they might have a kid that's a pretty good athlete that might be having success, but they don't really understand the process because they didn't deal with themselves, and people like yourself or me or other guys that did are trying to communicate it. But it is hard. It is hard because they might have a really good athlete, but they don't know how to navigate it because they didn't experience. And there's a gap there, in my
Yes.
opinion, with the newer generation because everyone's playing sports. And what happens is when you get more kids playing sports, you know what? There might be the guy who, went right out of high school and couldn't pursue sports and got a job and he might have been athletic and has a kid that now is coming up, but he doesn't know how to handle the process. That's why so many of the kids, like people are like, oh, this kid, they put him in because his father was a great athlete. A lot of it has to do with the mindset. Like the parent who played at a high level most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time understands what they went through. They went through a lot to get there, and they can communicate that to their kid. So the coach knows that at home that's getting communicated, And
Absolutely.
correct me if I'm wrong. What do you think about it?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like fully. Like I think that's a lot of the time where it comes from, right? Is because think about where the majority of your time or who majority of your athlete's time is spent with, right? So like, and I think you brought up, about the communication aspect of, sometimes what gets expressed from the athlete to the parent is very different than what actually happened. That they're kind of playing that middle role because they're just not comfortable enough saying certain things to a parent, or they know how that parent's going to take it, right? Or it could be that they're at fault and they just don't want to take the fall for it or own it, so then they have to put it on the coach when we know that's not true, right? So I see that a ton where now all of a sudden, mom or dad wants to come and talk about playing time, yet the kid's missed something, or he hasn't been there, or he's doing or acting a certain type of way. Now you get an email from a parent and the response is, well, do you know that so-and-so hasn't been here or whatever? Now you're laying all the cards on the table and the parent is so unaware of that. And now they're taken aback with, oh, wait, I didn't know that. Well, yeah, because your kid's not going to tell you that they're not doing what's right, or because they don't want to see that disappointment because they know you want them to be playing or whatever it is. But at the same time, like that's where I think that shows a lot about the character, how the house is kind of run or whatever it is. Like it's a really awkward spot of now, hey, let's have a meeting. And that's when you put it right out there, right? Like, and it's why to me, you always have a paper trail, right? You always have that assistant coach in the meeting. If it's a player or even a player and a parent, like you always want another set of eyes because like you said, hearsay changes a lot of things, and the outlook or the view of it, right? Like, or how it's worded, or a lot of those things can kind of get misconstrued, right? When it comes to it, like a phone call over a text or a phone call over an email, like there's things that can be misconstrued or taken the wrong way in writing something formally and not sitting there and actually looking at someone or having that conversation.
Absolutely. And
And don't
it's
do it in the moment, right? Like a lot of people do it. They'll write that email on Friday night at 11 o'clock when you just played at 7, right? Like let it sit and have and sleep on it. And I get it. That might be hard because you want to just fire off at the whim right from there. But you gotta kind of let it rest a little bit, let it kind of really sink in, hit home, then go and write it. Or then go and have
absolutely,
that conversation.
absolutely. And you know, like some of the great communication tools like the chat and all those kind of things, like
Yeah, like it's
people
great. But it also has
but they
now given
accidentally abuse
instant
it.
access. Yeah, it's
They
now instant
accidentally
access.
abuse it. They don't mean, I don't think parents mean to abuse it. I really don't.
No.
I think they get frustrated with something, they put something in that maybe they should, because what happens is we look in sports in high school is this part is less, but like in club, any kind of club sport, anything, I don't care, even if it's high school. I'm not talking about like the high. If it's going on in the high school team, there's a problem because it's easy to set your schedule because you have fields and courts and all that stuff. But in club, obviously, it happens a lot because most people don't own their fields. Most people don't own their courts. Most people don't own it, right? So you get these crazy schedules. You know, listen, even Little League baseball, right? Like they can't control if there's snow on the fields. You know what I mean? Like so they can't control the rain. They're changing it over and over again. It's not their fault, and you get frustrated. But you really have to just kind of like you kind of have to take a step back and be like, dude, this is what I'm in. Like we chose to be in this. We could have taken our kids to math league, okay? You chose to be in a club environment where most of these people don't own the fields. That's just how it is. Don't own the basketball is probably the worst because nobody owns these courts. You have to use other people's courts, right? Um Baseball deals with it in high school because of rainouts all the time. All the time. And parents start to get frustrated with the coach, and it's not the coach. The coach is doing the best they can in a lot of these instances and don't understand. Football's immune to that in like youth and high school because most of the time it's very set schedule. But you know, I think that it's very very difficult, and what happens is because they didn't go through any of this themselves on any macro level, they immediately get frustrated, and it's really like just some of these things are just part of the process. And you know, I always say this, like when people are like, you know, you play this kid because you know him. Well, you know what? Sometimes I do play a kid because I know what they can do.
Yep.
Like, I do know him. Okay. Now, does it mean that I'll always play him because I know him? No, because if a guy I don't know shows himself to be worthy, I play him because people are like, oh, you're going to start the kid from Homedale. You know, I watched him in practice twice. He's better than some of the other guys. He's going to start. You know, like I didn't know. I don't know him personally. I just
Right.
watched him. You know, so when someone says you know all the kids, well, I know these kids. Okay, I know they're good and the bad with them. I didn't know these two kids. I put them in right away because I watched them in practice. I watched them practice, and even if it was just one time, okay, I saw what he can do. You know what I'm saying? So that is how now it doesn't mean they stay there. It doesn't mean this kid stays there. You go and practice your butt off, work hard for the next 3 weeks. Maybe you pass one of these guys. Cool. I'll play you more. And that's a really, really difficult thing for parents to understand, you know, and this is why I always think it's so great to go and compete outside your area because you might dominate your area. You
Yep.
might. You might also be a great player who has a bad day. It happens.
It's part of it.
Kids have bad days.
There's no doubt.
You know what I'm saying? Like, they have bad days. Okay.
And they're allowed
Every
to.
and like, you know, as an athlete, like, dude, when accountability is so important. When I played the University of Maine, I was starting, I was cruising, I was playing well my senior year, and came off the edge the very first series. I did it a million times in practice, and I don't know what got into my head. I was so aggressive and so hyped up early in the game, and they ran. I thought, all right, I'm going to tackle the running back in the backfield for a 3-yard loss. The 3-yard loss. I just came right off the edge, and you know what? He ran a boot, and my job was outside contain, right, on my blitz. And what happened was, I realized that as I was about to, with as like, you know, when you remember these plays as an athlete. I saw it happening, but I had taken one step too many.
Yeah, you couldn't recover.
Could not recover. And I was a very good athlete. Now, in turf, if we were grass back then, but if I was on turf, I would have been able to recover. I was on grass. I could not recover. I slid just enough. Could not. He got. I mean, literally, my hand is reaching. He's an inch outside my hand. An inch. Okay, and that's where game of inches really is.
No
he
doubt.
gets out. He gets outside. Now there's no
That's it.
contain.
Now it's nothing.
Guys running free.
And you're getting ripped.
Touchdown. Rips the ball. Touchdown. We're down. You know what I knew before the end of the game? No matter how well I played the rest of the game, and I struggled. The team was good. They ran the ball all over us. And that was what I was mostly worried about because they were such a good running team. And they got me. And I knew I was going to lose my job. I played in the fourth quarter, lights out. I made a play to stop them on a 4th and 1.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
It didn't matter. I just knew the whole game
on the wall. Yeah.
The whole game I was playing my ass off like you're not going to be a starter next week. Luckily, we had a weird thing where a team forfeited. Okay, and I only ended up losing my job for a half. And it taught me something. I said, you know what? Coach told me, hey, you'll get a chance to get your chance. You'll get your chance again. That's what he said to me. You'll get your chance again. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to lock in, practice as hard as I can, do everything I'm supposed to do, show the coaches that I'm better, which I did. I was on the bench for 2 weeks. I had two quarters. I followed Vernon Hargraves up and down the sideline, and I knew eventually he was going to make a mistake because he was younger. He ended up being a great player, but he was younger than me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he just wasn't quite there yet. And he was huge. He was like 6'3", 240, but he wasn't there yet. And he made a mistake, and Hargraves turned around looking for somebody, and who did he bump into?
Standing right there.
You son of a bitch, get in there. And that was it. I started, the last 5 games, but I played the best football I ever played after that. From that moment that I got in, I did not take for granted. What happened was I took for granted that I was playing well. I was like, I'm playing well. I took it for granted that I was, and you know what? You can't do that as an athlete. You just can't. Even a really good athlete can never do that because there's another good athlete that just waiting in the wings, and there's not really much difference between the two of you. You might just do this slightly better and right now. And that's why I bring up the point, because the other guy was really maybe he wasn't as fast as me, which was my advantage, but he was more gifted physically. He was 6'3", 240. I mean, the only reason he was at FCS was because he was a terrible student at a high school. I mean, the dude was a stud, like a absolute stud, And all year long, I knew he was there. You know what I'm saying?
Well, also, I think that mentality too, like guys don't understand that at that level, like the coaches have to go every year, and like you have to go in with a mentality of like, I know this guy's out there on the road looking to replace me, because they're just trying to find the best people because that's their job. And I think a lot of people have a lot of, it's hard for them to kind of understand that unless they've like been in it, or you know what I mean? Like they've played from that underdog mentality of like, you can't take anything for granted, because that smallest inkling, like they're looking for a reason. right? In some cases to find another guy. It's why I always say that's why I go you tie in the go where you're wanted. Otherwise, you're never going to get you have a small amount of opportunities anyway, like for everybody. Even if you are the best player, there's going to come a point where it's why the mental thing, and that's why I think talking to people like Georgia and everything is so important. It's because as a high level athlete, like you have to be on all the time, and that's really, really hard to do, right? Because if you're not, that's when something's going to happen, and now you're out, and you may never get that shot again.
There's no doubt about it. It's one of the reasons why, like with the rec sports for travel sports versus I call it elite sports, meaning like the national travel scene,
Right.
that you have to understand. And in high school, it's the same thing. Like it's not travel sports, quote unquote, but like your local small high school, your big high school would be like regional travel, and your Don Bosco and the Bergen Catholics would be what you would consider like a national travel. It's just in a school system, right?
Correct.
Which makes it better, obviously, because it's in a school system. But
right,
but that's what it's kind of like, right? And so when you're in the lower level at rec, as far as quote unquote, like when you're, I do, like I always say, like I do love rec with no score being kept, because if a kid just wants to experience the sport, that's the best way to do it.
no doubt.
The best way to
it's still pure, like fun, like you know what I mean. Like that's it. There's not any like pressure, I guess, unless it's caused by the parent, right? Or
internally, a kid could want to win really bad.
Your own pressures, right? Like that's your own pressure that now you need to. But that's also something that I think youth sport kids or coaches or parents need to make people aware of like you're putting this pressure on yourself, and it can be a really good thing or it can be a detrimental thing. So you need to find a happy medium, right? But if you don't know that that's a thing, then you're just not, you know what I mean? Like you're going to go about it a certain way. So it always comes back to the self-awareness or informing the people of what it means to be or what they're feeling, and making everybody aware of kind of what's going on in this world of like, hey, I know you're feeling this, but there's others feeling this as well. Because if you don't know, you just don't know. So the more education you can put out there, I think at the youngest of ages, like as soon as they can comprehend and understand kind of what's going on and are really like kind of start to feel like, hey, this is why you're feeling this. Like, this is why you're angry. This is why you're throwing a temper tantrum. Like all of those things, I think just adds to it in the long run.
And what the greatest thing that ever was said to me, it was, when I was in 8th grade and I was, I had hit puberty, really started to hit puberty, and I was dominating a lot of things, right? And it's when you really start to think to yourself, wow, I always wanted to be really good and I was always pretty good, but now I'm like, maybe I really am good. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm at this track meet in Pennsylvania, and my father used to take me the day before, which was always great. He would take me the day before to see the track, to like, jog
Get
back
the lay
and
of the
forth.
land.
Yeah, go over a hurdle, just so you know what it's like. So when you come there and everybody's there, no one was there. Yeah. Another coach was there, and he maybe was doing that with his kids. And he was talking to my father, and he comes over to me, he goes, what's better than being a great athlete? And when you're in 8th grade, you're in middle school, you're cocky, right?
What?
I'm like, what? He's like, being a great person.
Yeah.
That's what he said. And it stuck with me to this day. Like my father was like, he didn't, my father, he didn't tell they weren't even, they weren't discussing that. He just told me that. You could see like, you could see a kid coming up. I was 5'9", 165 pounds in 8th grade, and, pretty built for an 8th grader. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like you could see that I was probably going to be pretty good against other 8th graders at that time. So when he said that to me, like my father's like, he's like, That is the most important thing. Like that's the most, and you like I try like when you go through your kids, like everybody has their own personality. Like your kid, you'll look at him and you're like, he's so much like me in these ways, and then he's different than you in this and this and this way, right? So you're like, wow, I got to learn to adapt to that part that's not like me because I don't think like that at all. You know, like I even when I was young, I never thought like that, but he thinks like that or she thinks like that. How do I address this to get them in the right mind frame? And the point about like with kids, it's always like I love when other coaches talk to my kid. You know what I mean? Like guys that I respect talk to my kid because I always think that it's important for them to hear it from somebody else. All right. And
Yep.
then I also want them to understand that like when a coach gets mad at you, it's like, so it happens to my kid too. I'm sitting there and the coach, my son does something and it's not something I'm coaching and he does something and gets mad at him. I see him kind of getting a little heated, and I'm like, I don't know if I would, say it to him like that, but I get it. And he, come over and be like, I'm so mad. I'm so mad. Like coaches, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, like, what were you doing? He's like, well, I should have got, I should have got a foul on this. The kid pushed me, flat out pushed me. I said, I saw it. He did. And I said, I saw what you did after too.
Right.
I said, so let me ask you this question. What you did after, so what he did in a real game, right? Because it was like a 3v3 thing. In a real game, he did that. You probably would have got to the line and got 2 foul shots. But if let's say he didn't call a foul, okay, let's use that scenario. Let's say you play a game. This happens all the time. They don't call that as a foul. You go do what you did. Now you get a technical foul.
Yep.
Okay, 2 shots to get the ball. How does that help your team? And then the first thing they want to do is say, give you excuses, right? No, I said, no, you didn't answer my question.
Right.
I said, how does that help your team? He's like, it doesn't. I said, that's exactly my point.
You're
Now I
like,
said, if you want to fight a kid, I said, I'll take you to a boxing.
Yeah. We'll put you in
Yeah,
that.
we'll go work your listen, I'm glad. Listen, my father taught me to box. I would love to take you for boxing. I think you're probably pretty good. Like you're a quarterback, that you move your feet and your hands. You play basketball. You probably be pretty good. Okay, like I'm not talking about putting him in actual boxing. Like I'm not putting my kid in like the boxing ring, but like the boxing sparring and stuff. I have no problem with that. So I said, I'll bring you there. I think you would probably like it, dude. You're a physical kid. You probably would like it. He's like, oh, well, that's not my point. I'm like, listen, if a kid in the street comes up to you and pushes you, you have my authority to sock him. In a game situation or practice, okay, this is a controlled environment, okay? That's not standing up for yourself. I know you think it is. I know that's what you think it is. And in the outside world, that's what it would be. In a game situation, you have to be able to control yourself to be able to like, okay, I'll take it to him in a different way in the game. I'll score on him.
No doubt.
And kids more and more feeling. Most dads, I could tell you this because I'm around them and you're around them. Most dads would be really, really mad at either the coach running the thing or the other player. And, and a lot of times mothers who don't understand that stuff, they'll get upset. I'm like, no. Now, if the kid flat out punched you, that's a different situation. Okay. I think you should try to get the hell out of there because you don't know what's going to happen at that point.
Right.
But, it's not like being in the street. Okay. But that's different. Or I said to him, did a coach harm you? I always say, did the coach harm you when he yelled at you or got on you? No. But your feelings might have been hurt, but he didn't harm you.
Right.
You got to start to know the difference. If a coach went over the top, first of all, I'll step in.
Like at that point,
I'll handle that situation.
Yes.
Okay. But if it's a little uncomfortable, maybe he didn't say it the way you like it, or even the way I might like it, right? But I even have to say, okay, you know what? Let me listen to the message here, because the message is you got to try to not do some of the things you're doing, right? And so this has to be done all the time, though, because people think they do it once, kids going to get it. Kids don't get it,
Consistency.
dude.
Has to be consistency, bro.
Kids don't get it. Like, they don't get it, and they don't have to get it at that point. You have to stay on them so they're not a 16-year-old who doesn't get it.
Absolutely.
Because if you're a 16-year-old that doesn't get it, it's going to be hard to change them. And there's no doubt if they're an 18-year-old that doesn't get it, the next 20 years.
Now you're dealing with real issues. You know what I'm saying? Like, I always say, like, guys want to like crush guys that screw up in high school. It's like, look, I'd rather you screw up there where you're in this little protective bubble, and the consequences, even though they feel at the time like they're really big, they aren't what it is once you get post high school. You're in this little protective bubble that even trouble isn't really trouble. Now you graduate and you do the same shit. Now trouble becomes real trouble. And guess what? Now you're dealing with stuff that stick with you for life, where for the most part, things that happen in high school, they get erased and you get a fresh start after graduation. And you can kind of do, you know what I mean? Like, because now you make that mistake post graduation, like you're dealing with, you know, the law, you're dealing with stuff that doesn't leave your name, that stays on for a really long time. Like, you have real deal repercussions, buddy. So if you're going to screw up, we have
an epidemic of
now.
You're right. We have an epidemic of it with the younger generation. You know,
because the consequences,
guys gotta want to wear a bomb. They try to bomb this, right?
Just like the consequences have been so lenient, right?
And that doesn't matter what political side you're on. It's both political sides.
Doesn't matter, right? But we're in this state of, well, we don't want to, you know, crush them, or we don't want to this, or we don't want to that. We don't want to discipline. We want to have a conversation. Well, when you're in school, though, that's the time to discipline. That's because this isn't permanent, right? And that's where the learning takes place, so that it doesn't happen later in life where the consequences are now way over the top and there's no going back to it, because they've been raised in this, you know, fugazi type of like, oh, okay, everything's okay. Like, well, no, that's not. That's where you have to create those consequences that like hammer home of like, you can't do that. And why? Because I said so, right? The line of authority is so grayed now. It's why you see, you know, people like just going out and just totally disrespecting either elders or authority figures, right? Like, there's no control over everything, because that's never been really preached. Because anytime somebody gets in trouble in school, mom or dad just calls and it goes away. Like, that's not how it works. Parents used to discipline on their own. I always use this reference. You've heard me use it before. It's like, it used to be, why did my kid fail your class? Now it's, why did you fail my kid? Right? Like,
absolutely.
It's not on me. It's on him or her. They didn't do what was expected. They didn't take care of business. Now you're going to write it off and say that it's me. Like, that's why teaching is so difficult. It used to be,
and that's why I was saying, like,
and the teacher together. You know what I'm saying? Like, you were on the same
team. Is there abuse or not? Like, that's people hate when you say that kind of like so extreme, you know. Is there bullying or not?
That's the only thing that gets across.
Is there abuse? Is there actual abuse or not? Because if it's not abusive and it's uncomfortable,
right? There's a huge difference.
There's a huge difference.
We don't want to put any kids, and by kids I mean teenagers, in uncomfortable situations where they don't feel a certain type of way. And now if you don't build up that callus or teach that, hey, life isn't always going to be fair. And by fair, I mean, like, you know, we're not talking the drastic or the extreme measures where, yes, something needs to be done, right? We're talking about the little things that's just kind of part of growing up and figuring it out and being able to work out these types of situations. If you don't raise awareness to that, because you've kept them in this sheltered, protective, you know what I mean, like little utopia of a world, well, then what happens? Like, what happens when they get into the real world and real things happen? They don't have the tools or the skills or the mental capacity to handle those things. And it's why we have so many mental health issues. It's why drugs and things like that have like come to the extreme measures of like just above and beyond now with the way, because everybody's always looking to deal with something with a quick, easy fix. Like sometimes you have to go through some uncomfortable and painful situations in order to learn and move forward. That's kind of just that. Look, that's my take on it. It might be where, you know, as a parent now, I can see how you always want to keep kids and you're especially your own in a certain, like you want to keep them protected because you don't want to see them hurt or in pain or anything, whether it be physical, mental, social, whatever that is. I get it. But at the same time, like just you have to make them aware and give them the tools to kind of go and do that. And I think that's extremely important. And I know you're probably getting a call right now. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like you probably didn't hear any of that, but at least for our viewers, I hope, you know, and look, some people might not agree with that. I get it. I totally understand if you want to go the other way, but that's my take on it. That's how my 2 kids will be raised, right? To kind of build up that callus, go through some of it, and then kind of go from there. But that's really, you know, my take on it after, you know, having been in education as a teacher at the high school level, at the middle school level, having coached for, you know, 17 years, going on year 17, right? In all kinds of socioeconomics, big schools, small schools, private school, public school, like, you know, all that kind of stuff. I think you got to build up that callus. That's just how I go through it. Can you hear me or no?
Well, unfortunately, I can't hear my man Derek.
You're good, buddy. You're good. Listen, we are good. Like I said, we are back tomorrow. Mike Wick, co-DC, outside linebackers coach from Princeton. He'll be on at 10. So we're all good, man. We will see you guys tomorrow. Appreciate you always spending time with us. And